best stories I've heard all minute.
All right, it looks like it's 7 p.m. So we will get started. Welcome everyone. The talk is going to begin in just a moment. My name is Juliana Medeiros. I'm a scientist at the Holden Arboretum, and I'm going to be one of your co-hosts tonight, along with Miss Natasha Fontaine, who you'll meet in just a moment. I'd like to give you a few technical notes before I introduce my co-host and tonight's speaker. First, just so that you're aware, we are recording this Zoom meeting, and the meeting is being live streamed to YouTube, where it will be permanently archived public viewing. The audience microphones will be muted for the entire talk, so if you're not muted now, please mute yourself. And we also recommend that audience members turn off their camera during the talk. We do encourage you to ask questions, and for that, we're going to be using the chat feature. Ms. Fontaine will be serving as our chat moderator tonight, and she'll be monitoring that chat window for your questions. So you can submit your questions in the chat at any time during the talk. Then at the end of the talk, Ms. Fontaine will choose questions from the chat window to ask the speaker. So we're getting close to starting. I'm just going to wait another moment for people to file in. All right, so once again, welcome to Holden Forest and Garden Scientist Lecture Series. Our mission here at HF&G is to connect people with the wonder, beauty, and value of trees and plants to inspire action for healthy communities. And we are very proud to be partnering with Black Botanists Week to bring you this next installment of a very exciting year-long series entitled Growing Black Roots, the Black Botanical Legacy. This series will cover a broad range of botanical disciplines and delve into the historical legacy of formally trained and self-taught Black botanists. Through this series, we seek to shine a light on the Black roots within botany, to foster a community of Black botanists, to demonstrate the diversity within this community, and to inspire others who may not have considered botany as a career choice. We want to give a huge thank you to the Cleveland Foundation for sponsoring this lecture series. The Cleveland Foundation works to enhance the lives of all residents of Greater Cleveland, now by working with donor community endowment, address needs through grant making, and provide leadership on key community issues. You can learn more at clevelandfoundation.org. Now, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Ms. Natasha Fontaine. Ms. Fontaine is one of the committee organizers of Black Botanists Week and also a graduate student at Florida State University, where she's focused on elucidating the symbiotic relationships between plants and birds, and how understanding patterns of plant diversity across the landscape, combined with bioacoustics monitoring, can inform the conservation and management of bird diversity. Ms. Fontaine is going to tell you a little more about Black Botanists Week and introduce tonight's speaker. So take it away, Ms. Fontaine.
Thank you, Dr. Medeiros, for that introduction. We are very excited about this partnership with Holden. Black Botanist Week was founded just this past summer to promote, encourage, create a safe space for and find more Black people and BIPOC who love plants. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Tanisha Williams. Dr. Williams is the Post-Doctoral Fellow in Botany at Bucknell University and the lead organizer of Black Botanist Week. Dr. Williams' research seeks to understand how plant functional traits and genetic diversity intersect to influence plant responses to climate change, with a focus on the genus Pelargonium, which displays high diversity in South Africa. Her work has included investigating herbarium records, conducting species distribution modeling, and using common garden approaches to elucidate genotype-by-environment interactions as a way to understand plasticity and adaptation, with an eye towards informing the conservation of biodiversity in the face of changing climate. In addition, Dr. Williams has extensive outreach experience, including as a Fulbright US student in South Africa and a graduate student mentor in the Botanical Society of America Plants program, among others. So without further ado, take it away, Dr. Williams.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to go on this journey with you. And this journey of uncovering the Black botanical legacy. So as I'm talking, I know I can't see the chat, but I know that Natasha is monitoring the chat, and I would love for everyone to speak to each other and chat to each other. So I want to know, have any of you seen this symbol, and do you know what this symbol is? I hope you're typing it up in the chat. Let me know. So this is the Sankofa symbol. San meaning return, ko meaning go, and fa meaning look. So let's return, go, and look. This symbol is of a bird flying straight with its head turning back. And this means that we must learn from our past in order to plan for our future. So tonight, we're going to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. Tonight, we are going to learn about some Black botanical legends. Some of these faces you may know, some of these faces you may not know, but let's take this journey together. Let's take this journey to learn together and also to uncover some of the Black botanical legacy. While I was preparing this talk and just thinking about why I had never heard about some of these Black botanists, I came to the conclusion, and I'll quote myself, that Black people have always been botanists, will continue to be botanists, and we are the original stewards of the earth. And I also understand why these lessons were not taught. A system of oppression does not uplift oppressed people and wants to erase the memory of our great history. So I'm going to start from the beginning of human evolution and quickly work our way through to some people, some Black botanists who have shaped the way we enjoy and how we use plants. So humans have evolved in Africa some 7 million years ago. 6 million years ago, human species began to walk on 2 legs, becoming bipedal, but still did a lot of climbing. About 4,000 years ago, there was the dominance of bipedalism, walking on 2 feet. 2 million years ago, humans started to use tools and stone tools and plant tools to access new food sources. Here I'm showing a hand axe that was used to crush food. 800,000 years ago, humans began to control fire and cook food, also getting new food sources, new nutrition because of the cooking of food. From 8,000 years ago to 200,000 years ago, brain sizes of humans begin to increase because of our diets, because of the climate changing. And on the left-hand side, we have a brain of Homo erectus. And on the right-hand side, we have our brain, Homo sapiens. And what is pictured here towards the left is a rendition of what Homo erectus looked like, and to the right of what Neanderthals looked like. So our species, Homo sapiens, evolved 300,000 years ago in Africa. About 12,000 years ago, we saw the early beginnings of plant and animal domestication. So here I'm showing this rock art from Libya, and we can see that there's a prolific association with plants, what looks like palms here. As we know, hunter and gatherers started domestication of plants, such as wild grasses, fruits, nuts, greens, legumes, underground tubers. So let's take a deeper look at some of these food staples. So I'm going to go through a couple of these food staples. So teff has its origins in Ethiopia and is one of the first domesticated plants. Teff accounts for about 2/3 of all of the daily protein intake within Ethiopia. And if you've ever had Ethiopian food, raise your hand, let me know. What's your favorite dish? But the flatbread that you use to eat the food called injera is actually made from teff. And I also highly encourage you, if you have not had Ethiopian food, to order some takeout after this. The next thing we have is coffee. I actually have some coffee with me right now. Off to the side, coffee Arabica, also known as the Arabian coffee or mountain coffee. I'm going to trademark and say it is a gift from the gods. That's me at the bottom enjoying coffee. It is how I stay awake. Its origins are from Ethiopia, although it's grown all throughout Africa and Jamaica and Brazil and other places in the world. 60% of all the coffee we drink are coming from coffee Arabica. Beans were initially chewed, but now we roast and brew them for the delicious beverages that we see here. Next is hibiscus, that also has West and East African origins, which I thought was a little surprising, only because growing up, whenever I was drinking hibiscus, it was Flor de Jamaica. And so I always thought this originated from South America, but no, East and West Africa are their origins. And Senegal's national drink is a hibiscus drink called bissap. And bissap is made very much like Flor de Jamaica, where we have the dried flowers of hibiscus are put with sugar and water, almost like in a simple syrup, and you can get really fancy with it and put mint and lemon juice and pineapple juice. But hibiscus is used for drinks and dyes and medicinal purposes as well. And I'm going to list just a few other examples of amazing plants coming out of Africa. So first we have the shea nut tree. And whenever I hear this, I think about, I'm not sure if some of you guys know, R.A. Lennox is a singer coming out of Washington, D.C. She has a song called Shea Butter Baby. And I always think of myself as a shea butter baby because I use it on my skin and on my hair. It's just a great product. And it's also used in cooking and other uses as well. Tamarind comes out of Africa, that's used in sweet and savory dishes, as well as black-eyed peas. So I just want to ask you guys in the chat, let me know, why do some people eat black-eyed peas on New Year's or New Year's Day? I would love to hear some of your answers. I see the chats going up. A couple people are in the chats, they know. So I'm gonna let you know. So in my family, this was a staple food throughout the year, but especially during the new year. So you eat black-eyed peas for good luck, and then also you eat greens. We ate collard greens, and that is to symbolize money and prosperity. So delicious, delicious New Year's Eve or New Year's Day meal. Next is the cola nut. And this can also give you a caffeine boost, and it has way more caffeine than the coffee that we drink. And this is chewed, normally chewed throughout the day. Next is sorghum, which is a staple food across Africa and used in many, many countries and for many uses as animal fodder, as well as human uses. The same as tamarind, it's used in both savory and sweet dishes. And lastly, we have African rice. Normally we think of Asian rice, but African rice is also a really important crop. It's not sold as often as it once was, but it's very much an important food staple in West Africa, especially in countries like Senegal. So now that we have learned a bit about the ancient people and plants that they use and also we use today, let's move a bit closer to 2021 and learn about some amazing Black botanists. I really want to highlight the people during this talk. So first, we will be remembering Dr. Thomas Wyatt Turner. So Dr. Turner was born in the late 1800s in Maryland. He got his BS and MA in biology from Howard University in Washington, DC. And I just want to highlight there's so many connections to Washington, DC, which is my home city. I was born and raised in DC, a very proud Washingtonian, and also a lot of connections to Howard University, which I also have. I didn't personally go to Howard, but all of my family went to Howard, either law school or medical school. And so it has a special place in my family's heart and in my heart. And so I want to say that I'm very proud of the people in my city for cultivating great botanists and great Black botanists. So Dr. Turner was also one of the founding members of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, and he continued that work throughout his life. He became a professor and the dean of the botany department at Howard University. He later goes on, while being professor and dean at Howard, to become the first Black person to receive a PhD in botany in the US at Cornell University. So he's working on the weekends getting his doctoral research done. And his research was in the physiological effects of salts in altering the ratio of top and root growth. The year after his PhD, he published this article about his botanical work, his dissertation research in the American Journal of Botany on looking at how salts are altering above ground and below ground vegetative biomass. He didn't stop there. He continued on with his professorship and moved on to Hampton University in Virginia. And then he continued to work with the government as well. So he worked for the USDA in Maine, looking at potato diseases. He also worked for the US Secretary of Agriculture in Virginia on other plant diseases. Later on in his life, he was the recipient of an honorary doctorate degree of science from the Catholic University of America in Washington, DC. This is significant because Dr. Turner was a devout Catholic, and he also did a lot in the church to desegregate the church. As well as in between his master's and PhD, Dr. Turner went to Catholic University, but later went to Cornell because Catholic University was too expensive. And from his book, From Sharecropper to Scientist, he writes that whether it was in NAACP circles, railroad and steamship discriminations, voting hindrances, or being barred from church observance, I have found myself ever battling to remove the disagreeable obstacles which were in the path of the Negro citizen wherever he went. And we can still see these disagreeable obstacles still in the path of Black people today, and highlighting voting hindrances have been in the news recently. Next, we're going to highlight Dr. Marie Clark Taylor. She is a phenomenal botanist. I'm super excited to tell you guys about Dr. Marie Clark Taylor. She was born in Pennsylvania. She then also got her BS and MS in biology and botany from Howard University. She was the first Black woman to receive a PhD in botany in the US and also at her university, Fordham University in New York. And she did this while being a high school teacher in Washington, DC. So that's amazing. So her doctoral research was on the influence of definite photoperiods upon growth of initiated floral primordia. And she worked with the plant scarlet sage, which I have here, so Salvia splendens. It's a really beautiful ornamental plant native to Brazil. And she looked at how much light, how light initiates growth. Now, most of her life she spent at Howard University, teaching there, training students. But something that she also was passionate about was teaching and making sure that teaching in a new way. So during the 50s and 60s, she started a summer science institute for high school teachers and spearheaded a new way of teaching science that we still use to this day. Yet I had never heard about Dr. Marie Clark and her influence on how we teach science across the world. So her new way of teaching science was bringing live specimens into the classroom. She was a huge advocate for living specimens in the classroom, and then also bringing microscopes into the classroom so students could see living cells, like I'm showing here, chloroplast cells from an Elodia plant moving. So seeing that in the classroom as you're teaching is going to be more impactful than a fixed slide. Because of all this hard work that she was doing, she worked with the National Science Foundation on science course development, and then the White House called her. So in the mid-1960s, she was requested by President Lyndon B. Johnson to expand her work overseas, bringing her teaching style of bringing those living specimens and microscopes into the classroom to an international level. So we really need to thank Dr. Marie Clark Taylor for the way we teach science today. I want to just say a little quote about one of her good friends, Dr. Margaret Collins, that she had some really nice words to say about Dr. Clark Taylor. But first, I want to interrupt this and say you should totally look up Dr. Margaret S. Collins. She is an amazing Black scientist, entomologist that worked on termites. And this is a woman of many firsts as well that you should know about. So Dr. Collins says about her friend that she was a powerhouse who worked tirelessly to improve teacher training in sciences and shape the way we teach science. Now I want to move back to the continent of Africa, and I want to highlight Dr. Wangari Maathai. Dr. Maathai was born in Kenya. She came to the States to get her bachelor's degree and master's degree at Benedict College and then at the University of Pittsburgh. She went back to Kenya to the University of Nairobi to get her PhD in veterinary anatomy. And that made her, in 1971, that made her the first woman in East and Central Africa to earn a doctorate degree. She is going to be a woman of many firsts as we'll go on this journey and see. She was the chair of later on, she became the chair and then also an associate professor at the university where she got her degree, at the University of Nairobi. And those two things, again, a woman of first, made her the first woman professor at a university in Kenya and first woman chair at a university in Kenya. Next, she founded the Green Belt Movement in 1977, and I want to tell you a little bit about this movement. So the Green Belt Movement has planted millions of trees to prevent soil erosion and provide firewood for cooking. So in 1989, a United Nations report noted that only 9 trees were replanted in Africa for every 100 trees that were cut down, causing serious problems in deforestation and environmental degradation, such as soil runoff, water pollution, difficulty finding firewood to cook, lack of animal nutrition, etc. So the Green Belt Movement program has been carried out primarily by women in villages of Kenya, who through protecting their environment and also through the paid employment of planting trees are able to better care for their families, as well as better care for their future and the future of not only Kenya, but the world. Next, Dr. Maathai is really active in the National Council of Women. She becomes the chair of the National Council of Women of Kenya. And then in 1986, she takes this Green Belt movement international. So she's moving out of Kenya. Operations are still growing strong in Kenya, but bringing this program to other countries throughout the continent, creating this Pan-African Green Belt network. And we're seeing there in Tanzania, Malawi, Lesotho, Zimbabwe. Just amazing, amazing work. In 2002, she comes back to the States as a distinguished visiting fellow for conservation at Yale, and then also teaches a course at Yale on environmentalism and also sustainable development. And then 2003, she's appointed the assistant minister in the Ministry for Environment and National Resources until 2005. And in 2004, she is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her contribution to sustainable development, democracy, and peace. She is the first African woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, and she is the first environmentalist, well before Al Gore, to receive this award. So the Nobel Peace Prize was never given to an environmentalist or for an environmental effort. And I just thought that was just so amazing that she was the first in her efforts. Now I'm going to let Dr. Maathai tell you a little bit about her efforts in her own words.
It's the people who must save the environment. It's the people who must make their leaders change. So we must stand up for what we believe in. We are faced with a challenge that calls for a shift in our thinking so that humanity stops threatening its life support system.
I couldn't choose just one quote from Dr. Maathai. I had to choose two because they were just so wonderful. She says, "It's the little things citizens do that will make a difference. And my little thing is planting trees." And planting trees she did. Through her organization, 51 million trees have been planted in Kenya alone since 1977. And that's not including all of the other international work that that her organization is doing. She also says, as something that I've really resonated with me, is that you cannot protect the environment unless you empower the people, you inform them and help them understand that these resources are their own and they must protect them. So now that we've gone through just 3 phenomenal Black botanists, I also want to highlight a few more Black botanists that I would love for you guys to look up. The first one is Edmund Albius. And so we would not have vanilla if it were not for him. And so I would highly encourage you to go back to the February talk, Brandy's talk, because she talks a bit about him if you want to learn more. Next, I want to highlight Jane Nellie Datcher, who was a pioneering botanist and beloved educator, also coming out of DC. Next, I want to highlight Hattie Carthen. She was an environmentalist and community activist based in Brooklyn, New York. She was known as the Tree Lady. So in her neighborhood, in the Bed-Stuy neighborhood of New York, she noticed that the government was knocking down trees. And so she created a community activist organization, an environmentalist based organization to stop the government from taking away the trees in Bed-Stuy and plant more trees in that neighborhood. And since her efforts, her organization still lives on, and they're planting trees. They have a community garden. It's a really nice effort that she started. Someone who is, I just wish I could find more on him, was Percy H. Gentle. He is a Afro-Caribbean from Belize who was a prolific botanical explorer and curator. This is just the tip of the iceberg of his collection. This 180 wood specimens from Belize, but in the few things that I found, it just shows that he's done so much, so many collections from around the world, but really focusing on Belize. And since I use herbarium records, so it's really near and dear to my heart. Dr. James Steele, so he's a medical doctor, botanist, and herbalist. So he did not have academic medical training because of the racist policies in America, but everyone called him the Black Doctor of Pines. He was based out of New Jersey. And he was known for his botanical and herbal knowledge, and also these the balms and salves and things like that that he would create. People came from miles and miles to see him, and it was also noted that he didn't turn people away. His patients were diverse, not only Black people. Next, I want to highlight is Mary Seacole. She is a Jamaican British nurse, herbalist, businesswoman who helped hundreds of people through the 1800s. Just an amazing woman, an amazing Black woman doing international travel and business working at a time where not too many people were doing those things. And on to some people that you could look up and meet today is Will Rogers. He is a conservation research professional specializing in rare plants at the State Botanical Gardens in Georgia. So I really recommend that you look him up. He's a botanist and artist. And also you may find out, he may give you the secrets as to which songs to sing to your plants. And last I want to highlight is Dr. Colin Young. He went to the University of Connecticut where I got my PhD. That's where he got his PhD in the same department. And he is from Belize as well, and has done phenomenal work, a botanist, ecologist, conservation biologist, and working in sustainable development to save the species in his country. So definitely look him up as well. And these are some more phenomenal Black botanists. So after having gone through looking up and trying to find information of these amazing Black botanists through history, I started to think more and more about my own Black botanical journey. And what came to mind were the stories and the people who I didn't realize actually shaped my love for plants. So I grew up hearing all sorts of stories about life in DC. This is the first thing that comes to mind is the 1900s, Washington, DC. I wasn't born then, but I heard a lot of stories about it. But before I share some of those stories, I want to share a bit with you about the woman who raised me and started my journey, my great-grandmother, Grace Alice Hawkins. She was born in Washington, DC in the early 1920s. She lived an amazing life, like meeting Jackie Robinson, traveling the world, helping neighbors, and saving lives as a registered nurse. I often say surgeon because if you heard her tell her stories, she was in the surgery room by herself for a lot of times due to racism. So she was a surgeon as well. She was also a force for social change. So she helped desegregate her hospital in Maryland. And she was the cornerstone to our family, and people just loved her. And I also think it's important to note that she raised me. So I would hear these stories, hear my great grandmother and just different folks, because when you're raised by your great grandmother, you get to meet a lot of older folks, and it's a lot of fun. I love the older generation. There's so much good, rich history and knowledge. So I would hear stories about DC having dirt roads, racism, domestic terrorism. I would hear about these long walks with newspaper in your shoes, church gatherings, farming, horseback riding, beekeeping, and most importantly, something that stands out is my great-grandmother would talk about her father's adventures on the railroad. So he worked for the railroad. And my grandmother's father would, on the summertime, want to take the family on these epic trips through the railroad to visit different states in the US by train. But my great grandmother's love for her great grandmother kept her home. And I used to always wonder, you didn't want to see the country? But no, she wanted to stay home with her granny. And so here on the left, I'm going to put the laser pointer on. So here on the left, right here is my great grandmother who raised me. This is her mother, my great grandmother's mother, and my great grandmother's siblings. Well, some of them, not all of them. And then this is my great grandmother's great grandmother right here. And so the two of these women would stay home in Washington, DC, and they were thick as thieves, as you would say. And so my great-grandmother's great-grandmother was an indigenous woman from the Blackfoot tribe, and she taught my grandmother her love for plants. So not only did she teach my grandmother good cooking, I can attest to that, she also taught her love for plants and her love for herbal remedies, and she would learn these things during the summer. And I'm so happy that my great-grandmother stayed home with her great-grandmother. So unfortunately, I don't have the recipe to some of these herbal remedies, but I definitely remember being on the receiving end of these treatments. And as I was also going through trying to really think about my plant journey, some of my earliest memories of plants and of plants in the home are these African violets. I talk about them all the time. The streptocarpus just have a special place in my heart because they were grown. My grandmother had a green thumb and she grew them all over our house. So as I was trying to find pictures of her collections of African violets, I really couldn't find any because this was the age of Polaroids. So that means not that many photos were taken and not wasting them on taking them on plants. So I couldn't find her collection of African violets, but what I did find as I was searching through are the many people that I loved and their connection to plants. And most of these pictures, you can see that my family and where I came from, and these are pictures in DC and throughout Maryland, Virginia, plants are always involved in our family. Even if they're in the background, they're always involved, always there. And that was something I really smiled upon because I didn't think about it until trying to uncover this Black botanical legacy. And something that I found was this calendar. So that Johnstown 2010, my great aunt, my great grandmother's sister, Alvina Wright, and who I call Auntie, was in this calendar. And I found that as I was searching through these pictures. And I was like, it just hit me. I was like, my auntie is a botanist as well. She was an award-winning gardener and cared for her garden yearly. We would go to Johnstown, Pennsylvania in the summers, and I would help her with her garden. And this is something that I completely forgot about. And so she did not have a college degree because she had to take care of her siblings, but this is what is said about her. So it said that although she didn't earn her college degree, she earned a bachelor's in gardening, a master's in kindness, and a doctorate in love and devotion to God, family, and cherished friends. So that is something I absolutely, absolutely believe and know it is true. And my auntie also, just because of where her house was located on a major street, so many people would come by and talk to her about her garden. She won awards for her garden. And she made these scrapbooks, and we would look at these scrapbooks. So many strangers, I mean, not even people that lived in Johnstown. These are people that are passing through the town that would like write her address down and send her a letter afterwards. And so she referred to her garden as God's masterpiece, and it was excellent therapy. So that's something that she said. And she is known in Johnstown, Pennsylvania as the Flower Lady on Monaco Boulevard. So all of these people helped to make it possible for me to do what I love today, which is study how amazing plants are. And so now I study how Pelargonium species respond to climate change. I did that in my dissertation work. And I looked at herbarium records to look at how flowering has shifted. So using herbarium records, as we saw with Percy Gentile, looking at kind of at how temperature are affecting flowering, but almost like Dr. Marie Clark Taylor. Also using common gardens, so planting out plants as well for a different purpose than Dr. Maathai, but also planting out plants. And using species distribution modeling to see how plants will respond to projected impacts of climate change. And again, these are using those herbarium records. In my postdoc work, I am getting more into looking at plant-people interactions, and I'm super, super excited to be working in Australia, but really working with an indigenous community known as the Mark II people to learn from them and how they use these solanum plants, so the bush tomato that they use throughout their communities. We're also describing new species and another tomato species here. And we're using population genomics methods to update the conservation status of rare plants here in Pennsylvania, very much like Will Rogers. And lastly, we are looking at just how the landscape of plants are shaped and looking at on a broad scale. And all of this is, I'm now beginning to see my research in like a new lens after going through this journey. So taking my postdoc and PhD research, and I'm seeing that at the middle of that is my passion. And my passion for one is to learning about plants, learning as much as I can about plants and conserving plants around the world. Next is mentoring. It's something that I've just really, really thoroughly enjoyed while here at Bucknell University. The many undergraduate students that we come in contact with, it's just a breath of fresh air to work with you guys. And I'm sure there are some on this call right now. Hi. And then science communication. So talking to anyone and everyone about plants and about how cool they are and how cool science is. So all of this work, my PhD and postdoc work, couldn't have been done alone, right? So this is work that was done with collaborators. So my PhD work at the University of Connecticut I really have to thank my advisors, lab mate, and all of the extended advisors in the US and in South Africa. And I would love to highlight a few Black South African botanists who really helped me in my research. So I was in the lab of Dr. Francis Lewu right here in the bottom picture. I was in his lab for a year with my Fulbright award. And then the top two pictures, on the left is Mashudu, on the right is Timothy, and they were phenomenal in helping me plant my gardens out in South Africa. So their knowledge and their help with that was just, I couldn't have done it without them. Next, again, I thank my postdoc mentor, Dr. Chris Martin, and all of our collaborators, but I would really like to highlight the undergraduate students. Those pictures here and some of the Zoom calls, that's just a smidget of the students that we have here. We just have phenomenal students working with us on all of those projects that I told you about. So now that we have fetched some of what is at risk for being left behind, let's move forward. And so it was really nice to highlight and learn more about this Black botanical legacy, but the work is not done. We still have a problem with the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this lack has promoted many movements throughout history, but the most recent movement is Black Lives Matter. And so I'm going to show a small little clip of the three organizers explaining the movement.
What prompted Black Lives Matter was really around the murder of Trayvon Martin in 2012. I wrote a Facebook post, Black people, I love you, I love us. Our lives matter, Black Lives Matter. Patrice put a hashtag in front of it, and I didn't know what a hashtag was. And Opal said, this is brilliant, and I think we should build something that connects people online and get people to do stuff together offline.
Alicia, Opal, and I created a container for Black protest to be seen and taken seriously. And then just like dandelions, folks bloomed out of that. And so we can't take sole responsibility for 3,000 protests around the globe, because that's people listening and responding and saying, okay, we hear the words Black Lives Matter, we're gonna prove it, we're gonna take it to the streets.
There are children who are coming of age in a generation where they see themselves as being affirmed and valued. We deserve to live in a multiracial democracy that works for all of us. So this is not in vain. Keep on.
And so the Black Lives Matter movement started in 2013 by these three phenomenal Black women, and you can see all of their accolades. And now this is just a very few of what they've done and are doing. But something that really resonated with me with this movement was what I have highlighted here. This movement is centered around the preservation of Black life, joy, love, justice, excellence, voices, and Black everything around the world. So, in the midst of the pandemic and yet another brutal murder and execution of a Black person, and on that same day in New York, there was a burning incident in Central Park where a white woman tried to use her privilege to weaponize calling the police on a Black man. This outraged the Black community and prompted the creation of Black Birders Week. I interacted with this week and felt a sense of joy and peace and happiness of finding other Black people that were excited about nature, excited about birds. I mean, I look at birds now. I'm definitely a plant person, but because of Black Birders Week, I'm definitely looking at more birds now. And I wanted to bring that sense of joy and community to Black botanists and also get to know other Black botanists. And that is when this committee created Black Botanist Week. And we had a phenomenal inaugural week in July. And then from there, the weeks just started to roll in, and we're still seeing the new creation of weeks. I'm pretty sure Black in the Environment is having a week soon during Earth Day. I think it's next week. And so these are efforts across the board, not only Black Botanist Week, but across the board. This is just a small sampling of some of the weeks that have gone on. So our efforts were so numerous and also so impactful that Science named our initiatives as the runner-up for the breakthrough of the year. And after the COVID vaccine, that makes sense. Like I'll let the COVID vaccine, have first place. And I'm excited because I'm fully vaccinated and just super thankful for that breakthrough of the year. And whenever I do a talk now, I always want to highlight these Black botanists, the Black Botanist Week committee members again and again and again. I thank you all for showing up and continuing to show up and doing this work. This is a lot of work for us, but all of us are passionate about it and we're showing up. And I just thank you all. So please follow each one of our Black Botanist Week committee members individually. Keep up with us on the website. We're going to start changing some things on there soon because we're going to have some new events coming this summer. So keep out for us and just know that Black Botanist Week Summer 2020 was not the end of it. We're making this an annual thing to uplift Black botanists. And with that, I really want to say Nkosi. That is the Xhosa word for thank you. I want to thank you so much for going on this journey with me. It's been an emotional journey, but an uplifting one to find just a little bit, shine a light on the Black botanical legacy. So with that, thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Williams. That was a joy to hear about amazing people. I was stunned by the amount of dedication each person must have had to make those accomplishments under those circumstances.
Yes.
Just stunning. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Fontaine. We've got some questions, so let's take it away.
Thank you so much. That was such a great talk. So we have a few questions. I will start with a question from Sarah Kiker. The story of your aunt's botanical knowledge is incredible. Ecologists today are increasingly relying on citizen science, indigenous knowledge, and personal gardening records. Do you have any indication of any racial bias in the citizen science data set that scientists use?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah, I don't have any resources per se to answer that question. That's a good one. But I do know of many different types of citizen science programs that are across the board, as far as there are some that are based at botanical gardens, there are some based at local gardens. So I'm sure we could maybe find out those numbers and may see a bias towards certain either genders or certain cultures and ethnicities, but I do know of quite a number of organizations, kind of like grassroots organizations that are doing citizen science work that are reaching diverse audiences. A great question.
So we have another question from Kay Stubble. Do you have any insights into how Indigenous knowledge can inform our understanding of climate change impacts in phenology or otherwise?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, I feel like that sort of ties into the Australia project that I'm doing here. So Indigenous knowledge means that they have worked with the landscape. They know these plants better than anyone else, better than any of us scientists that are coming to study these plants. And Indigenous knowledge is just so powerful, so impactful. And I feel like if we listen to and bring in Indigenous people to the table, as they say, have a seat at the table. If we're gonna tackle these climate change problems, we need to have everyone at the table, including Indigenous knowledge. I don't know if I answered the question though. But how can we use Indigenous knowledge to solve climate change or to like help with climate change? Is that kind of it? feel like
Yeah, it's to understand our understanding of climate change impacts.
Yeah, also, I would say a lot of indigenous knowledge is passed down through oral traditions, and so having those oral stories about when a drought happened or when a fire happened and what was there, what wasn't there, we could definitely use that. It's almost like looking at herbarium records, where we have these kind of time stamps through time of what was going on, when the plants were flowering and things like that. Just like we look at the herbarium records, indigenous knowledge is the same way. They know what plants are there, what animals are there, when they're flowering. For sure, this is a wealth of knowledge that we need to be using if we're going to tackle climate change.
So we have a great question from our YouTube viewers. It's amazing to look back and realize how important grandmothers are in keeping botanical knowledge and tradition. Do you know if studies about the influence of abuelas in botany? That's interesting. Woo.
Oh, I don't know of a study, but it's so funny. The plant love stories. They always say that their most common story is about abuela, grandmother. Like that is their connection. Oh, that would be interesting research to kind of get at that question. I don't know of a study, but great question.
Okay, let's see. We have a few more. Can you give advice for those interested to conduct more research on historical Black figures? What were your best resources, strategies, or tools?
That's a good question. So I felt like I hit some roadblocks, but I definitely use Google a lot, going into university library archives and things like that. If I were in DC, if I were back home, I would probably like go to downtown to the National Archives and like start digging through archives, because I think that is where we're going to find some of this information that's not digitized. But it definitely started with a Google search, and then just digging and going to, how Google has the little like 1 through 10 and like how many pages that they bring up. I definitely went down the rabbit hole, and I was like well past the 10 pages. I was like page 30, what page 40? Like I was digging in there to find these resources.
Awesome. We have another question here. How can we as mentors support our Black students in their own journey to find and be inspired by heroic figures in Black history?
That's a good question. I say now, like, I would hope that we're bringing in these figures into our lectures, into our teaching, so that we're helping our Black students, but also our non-Black students. So everyone has this knowledge of, hey, these are these awesome scientists, and the scientists are not only white men. The scientists looks like every one of us on this call today. So I'm definitely bringing in resources and using these names in your lectures, using these names when you're talking to students about great scientists.
We have another question from YouTube, from Dawn. Has the Black Botanist Week Steering Committee connected with any social historians to do research and gather the stories about Black botanists?
No, we haven't, but that is a great idea.
Yep.
That is, yes, thank you for that. We will be looking into that this summer. Thank you. Yeah. If that person knows of anyone, let us know.
You have time for maybe one more? Do you have one more, Natasha?
Not at the moment. I think that's it, unless someone wants to pop something in really quick. That's it.
Wow. Okay. I know I was not able to formulate very many questions tonight because I got wrapped up in the beauty of the stories. I want to see that wood collection, that Belize wood collection. That's all I could think about. So when we think about, I have one last question for you, Tanisha. Mm-hmm. When we think about how do we multiply the Black Botanist Week efforts over and over? So this lecture series is about doing that. But what other ways can the people watching this support Black Botanist Week besides following? Are there other ways that we can support you?
Yes, I'm hoping that what really struck me with the Black Lives Matter movement, and what I think was Patrice or Opal said, that we made this container and we made this movement so we can start to connect online, but also do things offline. We're in a pandemic right now, so we can't do things in person offline safely yet. But once we are out of this pandemic, I'm hoping that this Black Botanist Week initiatives are going to start helping people move their initiatives offline. So either that's at your universities or in your local communities, if you want to get together with Black botanists or Black people that are interested in plants. As you know, that we define botanists as anyone who is interested in plants. You don't need a scientific degree to be a botanist. And reaching out to those people. And as we know, I will also say that I want us to reach out to people, but then also acknowledge that a lot of us are doing this work for free. A lot of us are doing many work. So reaching out to many different people as well, just not your same persons, in bringing that knowledge into your neighborhood, bringing Black botanists and our knowledge into your classroom. So that would be one thing, is talking to us, interacting with us, doing things with us, and thinking about us, not just as a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion effort, but thinking about us when you think about botany, thinking about us when you think about science, period, not to just do those things.
Yeah, and maybe each of us could find one historic figure to cite in a paper, and then make sure that we're meeting more and more people to keep citing in our papers, because that's how the fame of science carries on, and we don't want to lose that great work that came before. So
yes. Citing Black botanists. Yes.
I've been surprised how the lens of thinking about Black botanists has had me discover new people in my field.
Yes.
So
yeah.
You know, that was neat for me, and it also speaks to the fact of the hidden world of Black botanists specifically, that people don't bring it to the forefront, that we aren't thinking about it on a daily basis. If you're not Black, it's not on your mind every day. So you got to make an effort and put it on your mind.
Exactly. Yep.
So
yeah, no, that's a huge point, and something that I'm also passionate about. So not only Black botanists, but also, since I worked in South Africa, a lot of my Black South African counterparts do not get cited, but they're American who did some work in South Africa gets cited. And so I'm very vigilant in citing South Africans in my work, because they did the work first, and this is where our work is stemming from, and also Black South Africans that did this work as well. And I want to do the same thing in Australia. I haven't published anything in Australia yet, but I want to do the same thing as we're working in these Indigenous communities, making sure we are citing them properly and giving them credit, and not just saying the Martu people, but giving them scientific credit for their knowledge and for them helping us in discovering more about the plants in Australia.
fantastic. I feel like I could talk all day. We're going a little bit over. Thank you, Dr. Williams. This was a fabulous talk. And I hope everybody can to talk more about these wonderful people and approach how they cite and how they talk about scientists with intention.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank Holden Forests and Gardens, Black Botanist Week committee members, and everyone on this call, also on the YouTube platform. Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for Ms. Fontaine for being our moderator. That is a great, fun job, and I hope you had fun doing it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm getting a little distracted having fun talking, so I need to just make sure that everybody knows that we do have this recorded on YouTube, so you can go back, you can watch it again, you can write down all the names, you can show it to your students, and you can also, we have educational materials that we've developed, which are on the Holden Forests and Gardens webpage. And Ms. Fontaine has put that link in the chat if you're interested. And then the last thing is, I don't want you to miss Dr. Silvera Seaman's talk. She's the next speaker, and she's the director and co-founder of the Washington Square Park Eco Projects. This is going to be really fun for us at Botanical Gardens because this is a neat project that takes a botanical garden approach to understanding a public park. And so we're really looking forward to this floodplain, forest, farmland, public park, the human and non-human lives of Washington Square Park. And with that, we will sadly have to say good night to everyone. So bye.
Bye.